Hello everybody, welcome back. I got another video review for you today, and it's for 2014-2015 psychological thriller film. I'm not going to call it an action film because it isn't, even though it's being heavily advertised as one. It's more of a horror, thriller, psychological type of film. It's not bad that it's not an action film. It's actually a really good psychological thriller, but the advertising is very misleading. The movie is directed by Adam Wingard? I think that's how you pronounce it. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right. And also written by Simon Barrett. For all of you who know, Adam was the man who directed You're Next. I forget what his first movie is called. It was defined as an acid horror film. A Horrible Way to Die. He had a segment in VHS2 and The ABCs of Death. And as many of you know, I really enjoyed You're Next. I reviewed it back in 2013 when it came out, and I thought it was awesome. It was one of my favorite horror movies to come out of that year, and it was one of my favorite horror films that came out in recent memory. It was definitely my favorite horror film of that year. I believe I already said that though, but some people didn't like it, to each his own. I thought it was a good comedic, self-aware horror film. A little bit of shaky cam here and there, but still good, gory fun. And this is from him. It's this thriller film, The Guest. And the advertising for this movie, it's making it look like it's a straightforward action film. Even on the cover, you're seeing these guys there. They're not in the movie until the end. This is barely a thing. That's barely a thing. I'm letting everyone know this right now, so that way you know what you're getting into when you're seeing this film. Whoever watches this, if you decide to watch this one day, you see this film, I want you to know what you're getting into if you decide to watch it. This is minor. That's not even an action scene, so it doesn't matter. This is at the end, and, well, that's him just being attractive. It's advertised similarly to Drive, if anyone has seen Drive. I'm sure a lot of people have seen Drive. Drive is a fantastic film, but Drive was also advertised as an action thriller film, but it wasn't. It was a thriller drama film with some action scenes in it. And that's not a bad thing, but it's very misleading to people. They'll expect one thing and then they get another. And I'm going to tell you right now, I loved this movie, but the reviews say it's big, it's bold, it's badass. That's not that it is. All kinds of awesome, which it also is, and impossibly cool. That's all the reviews from. That's all the reviews from the reviewers. It's on this Blu-ray here, but the problem is that it's on the back. It describes it as action-packed. There's not a lot of action in it. There's one shootout scene at the very end, and it doesn't last that long. The rest of the movie, though, it has good violence. It has good violence. It's not action. There's a difference. There's violence and there's action. This movie has plenty of violence, and it's brutal violence, but it doesn't have a lot of action. There is that one scene at the end where there is the shootout out the house, which is in the advertisement, so that's not a spoiler. But that's the only thing the movie gets to being an action movie. The rest of the movie, let's get into the plot. The plot is David, that's his name, the character's name, played by Dan Stevens. Yeah, Dan Stevens. He's from Dalton Alley. I never watched that. I don't watch PBS. But he plays a discharged special ops from the Army, and he goes to this family who he claims to have been friends with their son who passed away while he was in the military. And it's true. Throughout the movie, he says, yes, I knew your son, and there's a picture of them together while they're in the military. But then there's something off about this guy. He seems kind of on edge constantly. He's very out there. And the daughter, her name's Anna, played by Mika Monroe from Labor Day. Never saw Labor Day. I don't even know what that is, in all honesty. And she gets suspicious of him. She wants to figure out who he is. She wants to know more about him. And it's a very good suspense film. This is a good guy movie, too. Guys, bros, we like this movie. This is our type of movie. I pounded everyone out there, every guy out there. Ladies, you can dig it, too. This guy's very sexually attractive. I find him attractive, too. So, yeah, there's probably a candy for the ladies, but this is one for the guys, I promise. This is our movie. Similar to how Deer Hunter is a perfect guy movie, or Rambo is a perfect guy movie, First Blood, or any of the Rambo movies, really. Similar to how those are perfect guy movies. Has the same type of feel. And it's the suspense is riveting. It's really well paced, well acted. It knows when to have him, the director and writer knew exactly when to have David just go crazy. He doesn't, there at no point in the movie does he actually go Nick Cage crazy. He always has a straight face on, which one thing I wish they would have done with the character is they made him more personable. Throughout the movie he's very stoic, very calm, very relaxed, very quiet throughout the movie, and that leads to the character feeling mildly unrelatable. If he was more personable, more outgoing as a character, if the director would have had him do that instead of what they had him doing, he would have felt more sympathetic towards the end, because just to understand what's going on, you sympathize with, it's easy to sympathize with the character, but I feel as though it would have made it a bit more impactful if they would have had him more outgoing, more of a person than just a robot. I saw Rupert's review of it, and he said it's similar to the Terminator, and I kind of agree with that. He's very Terminator-esque. He's very much like Ryan Gosling from Drive. This movie is a Drive clone. However, that's not a bad thing. This is actually a great Drive clone. I've seen another Drive clone. It's called Elise Kills. It's okay, but this is a really well done Drive clone because it borrows from it just enough without getting too much of being a just straight copycat, but it is indeed a Drive clone. And I'm sure there's other movies that are similar to Drive that came out before Drive, but Drive's the popular one, so I'm going to talk about that. Now, one thing I noticed with the director's other movies, such as You're Next, what else did he do? You're Next, Horrible. I haven't seen Horrible Way to Die yet. I haven't seen that acid horror film yet. You're Next, and the other two I saw, the VHS segment and the ABC's of Death segment. He has this thing of making his film feel kind of slimy, kind of gross. I don't think there's a lot of people probably don't notice that, but when I watch his films, I kind of get that sense. Like, it doesn't look slimy and gross. They just kind of have that feeling of being slimy and gross. And this one's a bit more cleaned up, but it still does have that kind of tone to it. And I like that. I was kind of uncomfortable going into it, but it does work. And stuff like This Is the End, a self-aware horror film, that slimy, gross feeling the movie has does work. In VHS 2, his segment was kind of more weird, but it still kind of worked. It wasn't the best segment, it also wasn't the worst segment of that film, but it was okay. In VHS 2, the best segment was Safe Haven, but in ABC's of Death, every segment was out of place in that movie. Basically, that movie was terrible. His segment was funny, but he has more of a self-aware kind of thing going for him. This movie is not as self-aware as his other stuff. It's very straight to. There's a few jokes in there, a few violent gags, but overall, it is more straightforward than something along the lines of You're Next or Q for Quack, and I haven't seen Horrible Way to Die yet. I think I've heard before that is indeed a very more, not comedic, but more self-aware type of horror film. That's kind of his thing, it seems. And he seems to be, with this one, it definitely seems to be not so much of a straightforward, self-aware horror film. It's just more along the lines of a genuine psychological horror thriller. And I feel as though that type of change he did works. And that one action scene that does have is actually really well done. I would like to see him do more action movies. I think he can probably do an action movie really well. He's a good director. In You're Next, I kind of hoped that one complaint I had was the shaky cam. And both of these movies, I don't know why he does this. I'm not sure if he did this in Horrible Way to Die or that acid horror movie. That's all I'm going to call it because I don't remember his name. I don't know why he does this, but both this one and You're Next end on gags. I don't get why both movies he did does that. You can't do the same movie. You can't have the same movie. You can't have the same ending twice. It just doesn't work. That's why at the end I was just kind of like, I rolled my eyes, thought it was stupid, because all I could think of was, Your Next also had a gag at the end, so did this one. It kind of leads in for sequels, but, which I would like to see a sequel to this movie, see him go on something else, which it would be cool, just as long as he doesn't tell the same story twice, as that way it doesn't become, a Friday the 13th, or Halloween, or Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's just repetitive over and over again. I'd like to see him expand a bit more, have the character, I don't know, do some Die Hard stuff, like similarly to what the Raid 2 did. The Raid 2 had a lot of violent action in it, but it wasn't just the repeat of the first Raid. So I would like to see a guest too, but have it, I don't know, just do something different with it. They can even do a different character, I don't care. But it would be cool for him to expand on this character, because this character is really cool. David is a great character in this movie. His character holds the film together. All the acting is actually really well done. For the Terminator-esque thing that he had going, it worked, but like I said, I still would have preferred if they did it the way I said earlier, with the character being more approachable, more relatable, as opposed to being just straight-faced Terminator-esque. And that's just how I can describe it, because that's how it feels. He feels like he's a Terminator. He feels like the character from Drive. Not a bad thing, but it just kind of takes a little bit out of the movie. So, the movie, it is really good. It's a great suspense thriller film. Just know that going in. It's a suspense thriller. It's not an action movie. It's a horror film. This is a horror film without any stretch of the imagination. It's a horror film. It's a horror thriller film. It's a psychological horror film. And it works. Similar to how Fight Club's a psychological horror film. People will argue with me all the time that that's not a horror film. It is a horror film. It is one of the freakiest movies I've ever seen. And this movie is along the lines of that. It's freaky and it's strange. It has great suspense. The suspense of this movie is better than Your Next. I'm going to say that right now. But Your Next, like I said before, is more of a self-aware type of deal. So it's not supposed to be suspenseful or scary. But this one actually holds really great suspense. Definitely get the Blu-ray of this. It looks really good on Blu-ray. And like I said, guys, this is our type of movie. It's a guy movie. So I give it a 4 out of 5. So far, it's the best film I've seen this year. I'm not sure whether or not it came out last year or this year. It depends on how I look at it. I know it came out in theaters, very limited, last year, because I didn't even hear about it until it came out on Blu-ray. But anyways, I highly enjoyed it. I definitely recommend all my horror friends to check it out. All my friends who like good suspense movies, check it out. And I'll definitely be showing this movie to my friends if they ever want to see it. Or I might just force them to watch it. Anyways, guys, take care. God bless.